Imagine living in a Europe where every street exudes fear. The church bells don't announce celebrations but death itself. Where families disappear overnight, erased from the map as if they were never there. This happened in the 14th century. An invisible enemy swept through entire cities, taking lives and leaving deep scars that still echo today. It was the Black Death. It all started when trade routes brought a silent threat from Asia. In the dark and dank holds of ships, among bales of goods and rats, fleas carried a bacterium that would change the course of humanity, Yersinia pestis. When it reached Europe, it found the perfect environment to spread. Cities were walled, overcrowded, and hygiene was almost non-existent. Soon, high fevers, excruciating pain, and strange black swellings, the dreaded buboes, became signs of an almost certain sentence: death. Between 1347 and 1351, Europe plunged into despair. It is estimated that a third of the population perished. In some cities, up to 70% of the inhabitants succumbed. The streets emptied, cemeteries overflowed, and in many regions there were not even enough living people to bury the dead. Fear transformed everyday life into chaos. Many believed the plague was a punishment from God. So churches overflowed with desperate faithful, while bands of penitents marched along roads, whipping themselves in search of redemption. Yet, not all were spared by religious fervor. Minorities such as Jews and foreigners were unjustly accused of spreading the plague, often burned alive in acts of mass hysteria. With so many dead, labor shortages hit both fields and cities hard. The few peasants and workers who remained demanded better conditions and wages. This shook the foundations of feudalism, where lords who once held absolute power now depended on those they had previously considered mere servants. To understand the full impact of the plague, we must consider what life was like in the 14th century. Imagine bustling cities with narrow, winding streets, garbage piled up in the corners, and houses so close together that a fire could spread from one to another in an instant. Add to this a hot summer, the perfect condition for rats to thrive and carry diseases. And then, imagine the horror of seeing your neighbors fall ill and die in the streets, not knowing that you too may be next. This was the grim reality of medieval life during the plague. The Black Death was not just a disease outbreak, it was a traumatic experience that left its mark on every aspect of society. People were afraid to touch the dead, believing that the very air around them was contaminated. Entire communities were wiped out, leaving behind a profound sense of loss and fear. Those who survived were left to deal with the aftermath, burying their loved ones and trying to rebuild their lives. But the shadow of the plague hung over everything, changing the course of European history. In the face of such terror, people turned to religion for comfort. Churches became crowded as people sought solace in prayer and the promise of salvation. However, even faith was not enough to protect against the plague. Entire communities of monks and nuns were decimated, and the clergy was unable to offer a solution to the crisis. Some began to question the teachings of the church, blaming God for the suffering, or even accusing the clergy of neglecting their duties. This questioning would later contribute to the decline of the church's power and the rise of humanism during the Renaissance. The plague also had profound social and economic consequences. The massive loss of life led to labor shortages, which in turn contributed to the decline of feudalism. The demand for higher wages and better working conditions increased, and the traditional power structures began to crumble. Peasants who once toiled for low wages now had more bargaining power than ever before. In art, literature, and culture, the plague left an indelible mark. The triumph of death, a macabre theme that emerged at the time, reflects the obsession with death that permeated all aspects of life during the pandemic. Writers and artists documented the horrors of the plague, creating powerful images and stories that captured the suffering and loss of an entire generation. The Black Death was a tragedy of immeasurable proportions, but it also marked a turning point in history. It challenged religious beliefs, transformed social structures, and inspired artistic and intellectual movements that would shape the course of European civilization. From the depths of despair, humanity emerged transformed, more resilient and determined to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And if you want to learn more about plagues that marked our history, stay tuned. We'll bring you more videos about outbreaks that terrified the world.